A strange spiralling white light was spotted in the early morning sky over Sydney, with even sceptical witnesses wondering if it was a UFO.
They were last seen on the beach with a tall man, and that's the best description police have ever had of him.
More than 17 years after Harold Holt disappeared into raging surf at Cheviot Beach, his widow has finally revealed his last romantic words.
Shocking, terrifying, mesmerising. That's the way a number of Australians have described their alleged encounter with the Yowie.
It's time for the Weird Crap in Australia podcast. Welcome to Weird Crap in Australia. This is episode 4. I'm your host, Matthew Soul. Joining me is my co-host, Holly Hunt.
G'day.
Now, we're going to be discussing one of the most perplexing mysteries that I think has ever occurred in Australia. It has been covered on multiple podcasts. If you've never heard of it, you're going to be frustrated by the lack of resolution, the lack of conclusion to this case, as I have been. There are lots of podcasts about it, but I don't think we could be called Weird Crap in Australia, Holly, unless we covered probably one of the most strangest cases that has ever happened in Australia.
Yes.
We're talking about the Somerton Man today. He was a guy that perched himself up on a Adelaide beach, then died at some point during the day, and was basically...
During the night. I already have to correct you, during the night.
Yeah, I mean, see, this is what's so frustrating about this case. There's such so many details about it, and anyway, I'm going to go nuts with this. So I'm going to take a step back here. Holly, lead us through the events of the day leading up to the man being found and who was involved.
All right, so we have kind of got an idea of what kind of happened. I'm not going to say with any certainty that we know what happened, but there were 2 criminal investigations that went into this case, and they've kind of pieced most of it together. We're going to start with when he arrived in Adelaide, because that's the start of the story.
And he has no name, does he? It's just the Somerton Man, and he's never been identified.
Well, I was going to go into that later, but yeah, we don't know who he is. We don't know, well, we kind of know where he's from, like where he brought the train in from. But other than that, there are different sources saying he's Eastern European, he's British, he's American, he's Canadian.
So basically, we're just going to refer to him as the Somerton Man. That's all you can refer to him as. So no one is confused when you're listening along. We have no name for this man. He is forever known as the Somerton Man.
That's what's on his headstone, yes.
We are at the timeline. We're at the train station, Adelaide train station. Take it from there.
The Somerton Man himself supposedly walked into Adelaide train station on a train coming from either Sydney or Melbourne.
Great, so from anywhere in Australia you can... Oh, I'm already getting frustrated.
Anywhere on the eastern side. Southeastern. Now, he was on an overnight train, so he rocked up at about 10:50, somewhere between 10:30, 10:50. Supposedly, he went and had a shave at the communal bars, which were a thing back then. Just for those listening, this was in the 1948.
Yep. So,
a long time ago. Just remember these dates, all right? November 30th and 1st of December, 1948, because that's the days that we're talking about here.
That's our timeline.
Yeah. Literally about 8 hours. So, yeah, he rocked up. He had a shave at the communal baths. They think...
What's a communal bath?
Back in the 1940s, there used to be an actual... Because running water wasn't really a thing, like indoor heating, hot water... Some places in Melbourne didn't actually get that until the late 1960s.
Wow.
So in order to have a hot shower, in order to wash your clothes, all that kind of thing, you had to go to a communal bath. that was the only place where they had the boiler set up to constantly be running hot water. Now, one of these was located across the street from Adelaide train station. There was also one inside the train station.
So you're saying the only way to have a warm shower was to go into a communal space with a bunch of other naked men and have a shower with them present?
Usually a bath, not a shower, and most people only had them about once a week.
Warm, shared, weekly bath water.
You know that tuberculosis thing that happened during World War II?
Oh, disgusting.
Anyway,
That is
that's
so
off
gross.
topic. That's off topic, Matthew. We're going to ignore that. All he did was do a quick rub down with the towel and he shaved his face. That's all we can figure out he did, okay?
While a bunch of sweaty Australian men are just sitting in a warm bathtub.
Matthew, let it go.
Anyway. Ugh.
So they think he went and had a shower at the train station baths because he didn't have a ticket for the city baths. So they can already narrow down that he was probably at the train station when he did this.
So there are levels to the baths? It's like, if you can't afford
Let it go.
if you can't afford the high-class bath, which you get to share with a bunch of naked individuals, we have an even shittier bath with probably crappier water for you to enjoy.
It's the difference between a McDonald's bathroom and a public toilet, okay?
Wow, that's making it worse.
Just let it go. Let us move on.
Weird crap.
Let go of the
Australia,
bath.
Episode 5. Communal bathtubs.
Let go of the bath. Alright, so he went back into the train station, and somewhere between when he arrived and when the train left at 10:50, he bought a ticket. But that ticket didn't end up being used. They think he missed it because he also bought a bus ticket leaving at 11:15.
So this is where we start to get into our first lot of annoying shit. Obviously, this is very interesting. Some people speculate, did he miss the train and then be like, shit, I've missed my train, I'm going to have to take a bus? In which case, what made him miss his train? But what if it was weirder than that? What if he was trying to throw someone off the scent? So, okay, I'll look like I'm purchasing this train ticket, I'm never going to use it, and instead, so people are going to expect me to be on this train, but instead, I'm going to be on this bus.
Personally, I think you're overthinking it, but we'll move on.
Aliens, god damn it.
No, this is actually one of the few cases we have where aliens wasn't posited. So
this is
buy to that theory.
We've done 3 episodes. This is episode 4. So the other 3 episodes have all had the alien angle. This is the first one without any mention of aliens whatsoever.
Exactly.
Which means they did it.
No, Matthew. He apparently, this was found later on, he dropped off a briefcase at the railway station lockers before he got on his bus.
It was just sitting there.
Yeah, because people are like, well, someone's going to come back and get it.
Fuck, people were honest back in the 40s. Like, they're just like...
It was locked up. It was locked up. It wasn't just sitting there.
Oh, okay. I was just about to say, because that would look really weird if there's just, like, if it happened in modern times, you leave a briefcase fucking anywhere, you will have SWAT teams, you will have federal police, the news will rock up and talk about a bomb threat. Don't do that, by the way. As funny as it would be to leave a cheese sandwich in an unintended briefcase at an airport, do not do that.
Bad idea.
This is satire. Satire.
We're going to come back to the briefcase later, but I just thought I'd let you know, somewhere after 11 o'clock and before 11:15, when he got on the bus, he left his briefcase in there.
I hope everyone is taking notes, because if you don't take notes...
This is going to be complicated as fuck.
It's complicated. This goddamn thing is so complicated.
Not really. At this point, he got off the train, he had a shave, he dropped his briefcase off, he bought 2 tickets. That's where we're at right now. It's not that complicated.
It will get complicated.
No, it won't. It'll just get weird. So he's gotten on the bus. It's 11:15 a.m. The next time anyone says they saw him was at between 6:30 and 7 p.m. that night, sitting up against a rock wall on Somerton Beach.
And this was the couple, right? Was this the couple on the beach, or was this the guy walking past them?
This is the couple.
All right.
The first one to see him was the couple. I do have to point out in that missing gap, there is a woman connected to this case called the nurse. That's what we're going to call her because that's what she was known as for the first 60-odd years of this case. Some people speculate that he went to see her for reasons that are upcoming. There's some more complicated for you. So we finally got him between 6:30 and 7 p.m. sitting on the beach. The man, whose name is John Lyons, which I found in the 1959 criminal investigation, he saw the man sitting up against the rock wall. He lifted his right arm and dropped it. That man was sitting in the same position at 6:35 the next morning, when he was seen again with two men and, quote, a horse.
Because back in 1948 Australia, one of the easiest ways to get about was to own a horse.
Horse and sulky.
There just weren't that many cars.
No, especially not in Adelaide. That was between 6:30 and 7. Now, the next sighting was between 7:30 and 8. Another couple walked past him, but they didn't see him move. It's not like they were staring at him the whole time, so they did get the feeling that he did move a little bit. He changed position when they weren't watching.
See, I've always rejected this notion because two people, they're walking past someone and they're like, oh, that person looks like they need help. We don't really have time to help this guy. And they moved on. Later, they were told he was dead. They feel guilty about it. So they're like, he was still moving. I think he was dead. At this point, between 7:30 and 8 p.m., I think he's dead. Well and truly dead.
You want to hear something creepy?
Mm-hmm.
You
were there?
Yes. No. Someone saw a man looking down on him from the steps near the rock wall, but they didn't go near it. Now, if you see a random person looking at a guy sitting up against a brick wall and then just turn around and walk away, and then you wake up the next morning and hear that this kind of thing happened?
Yeah, but I would still be like, well, I was looking at the guy, and then another dude was like, oh, is that guy okay? And he just stood there staring. I mean, like, that...
No, he walked down, he looked at the guy, and then he walked back up and away again.
Maybe he thought he was drunk. I'm going to Occam razor the shit out of this thing. Because it's become such a mess. It's become such a mess. So, I mean, yeah, at 8 p.m...
I mean, I'm pretty sure I solved it, but, at least part of it.
You've solved it? Awesome.
I've solved part of it. And then the last witness that we know of is in 1959, when the second report was being put together. A man came forward to say that he and 3 others saw a man being carried towards the area. Now, this plays in with the theory of someone saying he was killed somewhere else and brought in, but that doesn't explain the moving right arm.
So, all right. So you've got one eyewitness who says that he saw him lift his arm and it drooped to the ground. You've then got a couple who suggested that he did move slightly. And then you've got another man saying, hey, we thought we saw this 3 guys dragging a guy and propping him up. So I think the man in 1959 who is the furthest away from the event is probably not someone I would give a super amount of credit to because he is so far removed. At this point, you're now looking at 11 years of history, right? Eyewitness testimonies are pretty rubbish. So one that comes 11 years later shouldn't be discounted, but should also be thought of as like, oh, this is someone remembering something that happened 11 years ago. If I asked you what you had for breakfast 2 weeks ago, what did you have?
Probably Sultana brand.
Probably, based on habit. And that's the thing. So I don't know how much credit I would give that guy. The 7 p.m. guy who did see the Somerton Man lift his arm up and it dropped. I happen to think based on, and we'll talk about this, based on how the Somerton Man died, I think that's probably closer. And then the couple who said they saw him move, again, I think they didn't. I think they're just trying to alleviate their guilt and not going up and checking on this guy. That's my hot take. What's your hot take on the...
My hot take is that we are never going to know because all these witness statements have vanished, being shredded or recycled or whatever, because cold cases used to be considered not very interesting and space filler.
And we're also talking about an era, though, where records weren't... These days, you can have thousands and thousands of digital records on a hard drive. Storage space isn't a problem. Back in...
you try fitting that same amount of boxes into a room and try and get in there.
And once you get to 1970, you've got... between, 1948 to 1970, you've got... 30-odd years of criminal investigations. Something has to go because you can't just keep buying warehouses. So, again, people will be like, it's all part of this conspiracy. And it may be. I have a theory about this guy, and it could play into that later on. But the thing about this is that at, 30 years, you're going to have to shred some shit. And you're going to shred it because they're confidential documents.
And especially when you have no idea that there are going to be armchair detectives out there looking into your shit.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. Thank you, Internet, for dragging this fucking case back up.
Because it wasn't frustrating enough the first time. All right, so those are the witnesses. That's the timeline that we've got.
But we don't have any... One thing as well, and you've noted it here, is that the witness statements, they're completely gone, which means that we only have secondary sources. And if I recall Ancient History Year 10, secondary sources should be considered with a skeptical point of view.
Okay, so secondary sources, when we're talking about it, first, primary sources, you've got your witness statements, you've got your crime scene report. Secondary sources, you're looking at your police report, your first responders report 3 months later and stuff like that. Things that are...
Okay, so it's not like ancient history then.
It is kind of, but ancient history, we're dealing with a much longer chain of time. But yeah, so secondary in the true crime, we're mainly looking at police reports and we're looking at my mother told me's.
Okay, my mother told me. Those are the ones that we have to be skeptical about.
Yeah, police reports not so much because they're mostly known for sticking to the truth.
My grandmother once said that she saw this weird object fly out of the sky and land in front of her.
Was it a rock?
I don't know. It sounds to me like it could have been something like ball lightning or just a small. What's the? I don't want to say comet because I think comets are big. A small piece of comet, meteorite, I think. Yeah, shit like that. I happen to think that's what they saw. But I digress. Let's talk about the man, Holly. This is where it starts to get weird.
All right, so we have our timeline. When we started the investigation into what happened, they went through his pockets and they found the unused tram ticket. They found the used bus ticket, which, we already know. They found an aluminium American comb. They found half a pack of juicy fruit. I was surprised that juicy fruit was around back then.
Yeah, believe it or not, Wiggly's, and I think Wiggly's own juicy fruit.
I'm pretty sure.
Who's their competitor? There were basically two gum companies, and those companies have been in existence for forever. So, Juicy Fruit was one of the very first chewing gum concoctions that was ever made. And the chewing gum actually came from Mexico, and they were trying to sell it as a replacement for rubber. And someone was like, no, we'll just make it taste good, and people can chew on it and spit it out. That was a freebie. That was a freebie, everybody. You enjoyed a free history lesson.
Okay, back to the Somerton Man, because we've already digressed way too much. When they went through his pockets, they also found a packet of cigarettes. Now, the packet was a Army Club cigarette, which is a cheap kind of cigarette. It contained, don't know how to say this.
Conceiters. I would say conceiters. Yeah.
They contained conceiters cigarettes, which are a very expensive cigarette. I don't know if you know this, but during 1948, Australia was still under war rations.
Yeah, it wasn't uncommon for people to hide their more expensive shit in stuff that didn't look as expensive because people would try and steal your stuff all the time. It was a horrible time for a lot of people. The Great Depression had hit and... No, it's after the Great Depression, isn't it? So World War II, right?
This is post-World War II, yeah.
Yep, but everyone's still sort of rebuilding after World War II.
Yeah, even Australia.
So that's not that crazy to hide fancier cigarettes. Unless, of course, you're pretending to be someone else because you're a spy.
No.
And we'll get to that later.
Okay, no. The reason why he was hiding his expensive cigarettes, according to some people, is because they were payment for shit that he shouldn't have been up to.
I think you would have preferred cash, to eat.
Not really,
and
because you
live.
can trade cigarettes anywhere. That's like jailhouse bartering system.
You can also trade... Money can be exchanged for goods and services.
Money only works up until the border of the country it's from, Matthew. Cigarettes are universal.
Yeah, I suppose so. You could look at it that way. And the last thing he found was a box of matches for the cigarettes. Just breeze past that one.
Okay, now the Somerton Man himself, we're going to build you a little bit of a mental profile here. He was 5'11", was round about 45 years old. He had a strong build. He was clean shaven, obviously, because he had a shave. He had fair/ginger hair, which was going grey at the temples. He had grey eyes and, quote, natural teeth. This means that he didn't wear a complete set of falsies, but he was missing 18 out of 32 teeth, including all of his molars except for 2, and his upper incisors, which are the ones right next to your very front ones.
So in a cartoon, when Bugs Bunny smiles and he's missing most of his teeth, that's what this guy looked like.
Pretty sure he had like dentures in to fill in the holes. Those dental records sound like they would be, pretty easy to work out, right?
Yep. Yeah, there should be some sort of record for someone who has such a unique palate.
Nope. No dental records, no fingerprints, nothing matched anybody.
But I mean, this is the question too. Like, we don't know this guy's socioeconomic background. So to put things again in perspective, I remember my mother, who was born in the late 60s, said to me she didn't see her first toothbrush until she was 14. Dental hygiene wasn't something that was considered very highly right into the early 70s.
However, there is a case for him not being of a low socioeconomic background, that being the fact that he had well-manicured hands without calluses, meaning that he was not a physical labourer.
I do physical labour myself. My hands are fucked.
It's quite obvious when someone works for a living, like with their hands, because they're covered in calluses. I'm a butcher and I have calluses from my knife.
Yep.
And I've only been doing that like 8 years now. So labourers tend to have calluses and labourers tend to be at the bottom of the socioeconomic food chain.
Yep.
Now, he also had the wedged feet and toned calves of either a dancer or a mid-length marathon runner.
And this could suggest possible military training.
Yes.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Which makes it weird that they don't have dental records on him if it is military training, because that sort of shit is covered.
Yeah, you would have records talking about, like, when you go into the army.
Fingerprints, teeth, everything.
Yeah, you need some identifiers. You have a file on you. And to have such a distinctive, what would I say? Just a distinctive dental history that should be well documented in a military report. So, but again, if he was American, like he had this American comb on him, if he was American, and we'll speculate on that a little bit later, it's not like the connected world we live in today. Hang
on, before you go into that, they also searched American and British records for him.
Shut up.
No signs in the American databases, no signs under Scotland Yard. The FBI had nothing on him. Said they had nothing on him. It makes no sense, honestly.
Yeah, it's peculiar. This is where it gets weird. I warned everyone that it would get weird.
We were taking a nosedive into crazy town and we're almost there.
Yep.
Alright, he had no wallet or ID, which is obviously the first thing they would have looked at. And all the tags from his clothing was cut off, meaning that there was no designer labels they could backtrack, anything like that. There is a reason for that, however.
Yep.
His clothes were all supposedly second-hand, as they worked out due to some contents of the briefcase that I'll talk about later. And usually tags are where you write your name. So if you write your name on a tag and then you sell the jacket, then they'll cut your name off the tag, so that way they can sell it and it's not someone else's clothing. His time of death is also something that there's a big question over. In 1948, the time of death was estimated to be at about 2 a.m. on the 1st of December. This has come under some dispute, because depending on how he died, the time of death could actually be rather more varied. Certain poisons have an effect on the body. They play with metabolism a little bit, meaning that he could have died at 10 o'clock, but his body wouldn't have cooled down enough until 2 o'clock.
Because the way they used to diagnose death was through digestion rate. So if you've imbibed something or if you've taken something that causes your death, which again, we'll get into his possible what happened to him eventually. But if that thing is affecting digestion, then you're not going to be able to have an accurate time of death based on digestion, which is what they used to pronounce time of death on when they found a body. Now there are all sorts of interesting things you can do when it comes to determining how a body has died. Like, I think, entomology, which is the study of bugs and their gestation period within the body. It's very interesting stuff. Horribly gory, but very interesting.
If you're a maths nerd, you can also use the temperature of the liver.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of ways we can do it now. But again, keep in mind, this is 1948 Australia. Not even 1948 America, or Britain, which were far more advanced at this point than we were. So it's, you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, we're still a colony at this point. Accurate time of death is not really on anyone's agenda. Because of, as we said, digestion rate was used to work it out, he apparently supposedly ate a pasty between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. This would mean that he moved.
Just quickly here, I got to qualify this as well for our international listeners. A pasty, as I like to call it, not a pasty. A pasty is...
I don't eat them, so I don't know what they're called.
It's like a folded, crusty outside.
It's almost a calzone is what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of like a calzone, but it's got like a mixture of like vegetables in it, really. And that's what a pasty is. It's usually, you'll see some carrot in there and some potato, and it's all sort of mixed together. And sometimes people add meat, sometimes they're just vegetarian. But it's a classic snack next to the sausage roll and the meat pie.
The only time I've ever seen a pasty was at the scout camp in Jamboree. Adelaide.
You've never had a pasty?
No, I haven't. But listen to the rest of this story because it proves why the pasty is evil. Any of the scouts or scout leaders who ate a pasty on that camp ended up with horrible, horrible gastro. I've not eaten a pasty for a very particular reason, being that pasties are evil and will probably try to kill you. That might have been what killed him.
Hey, it could have actually been. It could have actually been what killed the Somerton Man.
That's my little story. I get to add one in for a change.
Absolutely.
Again, if you ended up eating the pasty between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m.
Pasty. A pasty is what you put on your nipples.
Fine, if you ate the pasty between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m., that meant that he moved after the witnesses saw him.
That would make it even more weird if they found him wearing, like, sexy stripper pasties.
You just can't get past it, can you?
It would be fucking funny. Anyway, I digress.
As usual. Anyway, if he moved and returned to the same spot on the wall, he somehow managed to get in the same position in exactly the same place as when he was seen by the guy who A, saw him the night before, and B, found the body the next day. That is the same guy, okay? So he would know if the guy had moved.
Yep.
So I'm going to throw that hasty digestion rate out the window.
Pasty.
It's obviously bullshit, and I'm ignoring you now. This is where we get a little bit more interesting, because there was one clue that was found on his body, but it wasn't found until January. Mid-January, it was found sewn into a pocket of his pants.
Yep. This is where it gets weird.
This is where it gets stupid.
Yeah. So, what was found in the secret pocket, Holly?
What was found in the secret pocket was a scrap from the back of a book that had 2 words in Persian written on it. Tamam Shud, which means finished.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, spooky, right?
We could have taken this podcast down the spooky angle, but a lot of people have talked about the spookiness of all of this. I think there are some explanations around a lot of this. It's just, there is a ton of weird crap. Okay, so these things isolated by themselves, you're probably not going to really pay them much mind. It's just that all of the strangeness sort of came together.
It all happened to one person.
Yeah, it all comes together. If you wanted to keep something safe back in the day, well, you sewed it into your clothes. But yeah, it is weird. This one is weird, and there's not a very good explanation for it. And I guess this is what gives me the most frustration, actually, is this thing. Yeah.
I do have to make one tiny little bit of a correction here. The paper was found in June, so it took them 7 months to find the bit of paper.
Yeah. But it was in a pocket, no one was really paying attention.
Yeah, but you pat down pockets and you can hear a crumple of paper.
So I'll talk a little bit about this piece of paper for a second here, just to give you some background on it.
You go wild.
So as we said, it was found in the inner pocket. Paper that was found in the inner pocket appeared to be torn from a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, I think.
Hopefully we're saying it right.
All right, so the piece of paper, which came from a copy of a book of poetry, of Persian poetry, called the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The actual book that this piece of paper came from was discovered, and this is where it gets even weirder. Or stupider. The book was found by a random dude in the back of his car because it looked like someone had either put it there or thrown it through his window. Which is just odd. It's very, very bizarre. But it's a clue. It leads us further down the rabbit hole. Because inside the back cover, there are some indentations found. That was a phone number, which they found would later belong to a nurse in Glenelg. Is that it? Glenelg. An unrecognized number, so just random numbers. And an encrypted message, which so far has been unable to be deciphered by anyone.
Yeah, even the best crypto minds on the internet can't figure it out.
That also includes the crypto departments in places like the Federal Bureau of Investigations in America. No one can determine what this is, right? It seems to have any pattern. So either it is the best code on the fucking planet, or it means shit. Or it means shit. I think when things like this come up, I often think about the Zodiac case. One of his ciphers.
Fuck that thing.
Yeah, we're never going to talk about that. If the Somerton Man upsets you, never look into the Zodiac, because that's even stranger. But the Zodiac killer used a cryptograph, and he sent out these messages. One of them was deciphered, the rest weren't. However, when they deciphered the first message, at the bottom of it, it just turned into rambling shit, which obviously only meant something to the killer. And then further notes could never be deciphered. So there is the possibility that this, whatever was written down, was maybe a cryptograph done wrong, or it was just random bullshit to throw someone off. It could absolutely be nothing, and that's why it's never been able to be broken. Or it could be the most amazing code in the world.
One of the leading theories so far is that it's actually the first letter of words. But because you don't actually know what the code was talking about, you can't work out what the words are.
Yeah, that's a possibility. They've used the Rubaiyat as well. They've gone through the Rubaiyat again and again and again to try and find the cipher. Now, I think that's the terminology. The cipher is what you would use to decode a message. And usually when it comes to books, it's like, to give you a basic idea here, let's say I have a Bible and I want to communicate a very basic message to Holly. And I put in John 51 and this and this and this. And Holly then goes and looks up those passages. And let's say we've agreed that our code, every passage that I direct her to, the first word of every second sentence is what are the words I'm trying to get across to Holly. She would have that. She would know the cipher. So the Bible in this case would be the cipher. That's how it works. So they've tried to use the Rubaiyat to determine if there is, like, the secret to deciphering the message is in that book, and they haven't been able to. No one has ever decoded the message, which leads me to think that it's just random shit.
Well, we're never really going to know because the original book was lost or destroyed in the 1960s.
Yep. Again, evidence gets destroyed. It does happen a lot. Sometimes there's no conspiracy, but we do have a couple of conspiracy theories ideas for this as well.
Hang on. We want to get through the next 2 points before we jump into conspiracy theories here.
I was just about to say, before we do that, though, there is some more stuff that we need to talk about.
2 more things.
Specifically...
The suitcase and the nurse.
So the suitcase. There were a couple of things in the suitcase, and that's the one that was checked in the 30th of the 12th, 1948, sometime after 11 a.m., and that was never
30th,
picked
the
up.
11th.
Yep.
I wrote the wrong number there. It's the 30th of November.
Oh. So
when he reached the train station.
Yep. So what was found inside of the suitcase? There was a red checkered dressing gown, normal for a dude. A size 7 red felt pair of slippers. So this guy was obviously Hugh Hefner. 4 pairs of underpants, because it's important to have multiples. Pajamas. Shaving items. He had a shave, we know that. A light brown pair of trousers with sand in the cuffs. So, this is a big one, because this means that he'd been possibly, he had been to the beach before. But you have to also understand Australia. There are beaches everywhere.
Sand is everywhere.
And if he did, in fact, come from Melbourne, Port Arthur, or Sydney, there are beaches there, I believe.
Port Augusta.
Port Augusta, which definitely has a beach, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been there. So he could have come from a beach area. So that doesn't necessarily mean that he was skulking around Adelaide beforehand. There was also an electrician's screwdriver. Not crazy to have something like that. Could be used as a weapon if needed, in sort of tumultuous times. He had a table knife cut down into a short, sharp instrument. Again, good for defending yourself. He had a pair of scissors with sharpened points. Again, good for defending yourself. It's weird, though, that he has so many items like this. You know what I mean?
Only because you're thinking of the most immediate use. 3 of them can actually be used with the stenciling brush also found. They can use the knife to cut the zinc into specific shapes if they want to print something or rub something down. You don't specifically need to kill someone with stuff, Matthew.
This is true too. But like Holly just said, there was a small square of zinc thought to have been used as a protective sheath for the knife and scissors. And there was a stenciling brush as used by third officers on merchant ships for stenciling cargo. And what that means is you basically write on they had to draw on the cargo to say where it was going, or at least indicate which company owned the cargo. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, how did he get it if he wasn't a labourer? Because he had no calluses, he couldn't have been an officer.
It's kind of weird, yeah. It's kind of weird that he had all of those 2 last items are very indicative of someone who works with their hands a lot. And it doesn't appear like he did. As we mentioned at the top, there were no labels on any of his clothing, except there was a name found on his tie, which was T. Keen, whether that was...
With an E.
With an E. Whether that was actually his or not, we don't know. Whether that was his name. There's Keen on a laundry bag in the suitcase, and Keen on a singlet inside with 3...
That time without an E.
Yep, with 3 dry cleaning tags. So... This is, you could say that this guy could be T. Keen?
No, not necessarily, because all of these names were written on the clothing itself, using on tags that couldn't be removed without damaging the clothing. Again, if it's second-hand clothing, you're not going to want to damage it because you can't sell it. You're just going to have to sell it with the name on.
Correct. And then, the dry cleaning tags could not be traced, which is also pretty weird. That no one could identify those tags.
Not really. Back in 1948, it's not like you had a database of everyone, and it's not like everyone kept their tags after they got rid of the clothes.
Yeah, I suppose so, but you think someone would be able to turn around and go, oh yeah, those are the tags that we frequently use, or that's Joe Bob's handwriting. Thanks, Joe Bob. And Joe Bob puts his hand up.
They kind of narrowed it down to 3 dry cleaners in Melbourne, but they couldn't work out exactly which one, or what they were once attached to.
Yep. There was also some orange tan thread, which was found inside the case, which matched darning work on the clothing Somerton Man was wearing. It's not available in Australia at the time. That's the big one. So this thread, it was American thread, which meant that either Somerton Man went to America or the clothes were bought off someone who did. Now, this case was destroyed in 1986. Again, there isn't a okay, there could be a conspiracy here. And that's what probably anyone listening to this are probably like, the government did it. The lizards.
People have to remember something, though. Like, with that, people have to remember something. The government couldn't organise an orgy in a brothel. What the fuck makes you think they're going to be able to organise this?
It's true. You know, whenever, like, look at one of the biggest conspiracies of all time, which was Watergate. Richard Nixon had many, many people working for him, and even they couldn't pull off a conspiracy long enough to get re-elected and serve out his second term. So just think about that. Right now, in our current world, the Russians had some involvement in the Trump campaign, and they're being discovered. They didn't even last 2 fucking years before an investigation started. So conspiracy is one of those things that is actually really hard to pull off. So keep that in mind. Again, you have to make room for other evidence when cold cases are cold for 30, 50 years. So, Holly, let's talk about the nurse. Run us through the nurse.
The nurse was a very interesting figure in this case because she says she wasn't involved, but all the evidence points that she probably was. The phone number identified in the back of the book that Tamam Shud came from was for a nurse called Jessica Ellen Jo Thompson, who lived 400 metres north of the Somerton Beach. When interviewed by police, she said she didn't know the dead man, but did say that a strange man had been asking about her in her neighbourhood in late 1948. When Jerry Feltus was going through interviewing people for his Somerton Man book, he talked to her. He thought she was being evasive and didn't want to talk about it, which is not exactly something that you do when you want to be cleared of involvement.
That can be the case. People react differently to different situations. Look, you're approaching an old lady with weird questions. She's probably going to act a bit odd.
Yeah, except that her daughter said that her mother knew who he was.
That has been, she has said that. I think it was on a 60 Minutes interview, right?
In 2013, yes, she did.
Yep. And she quoted her mother saying, the man's identity was known to a higher level than the police force. Bum, bum, bum. Possibly.
Her daughter, Kate, was theorising that Jessica was actually a spy alongside the Somerton Man, assuming the Somerton Man was a spy. As Jessica taught English to migrants, was interested in communism, and could speak Russian, though she never disclosed how or why she learned it. In 1948, knowing Russian is incredibly weird. Not wanting people to know you do is not so weird.
After the events of World War II, Germany was split into halves. The Allies took one side, and that was essentially run as a democracy. The Russians took the other side, and they ran it under the communism regime. So if you knew Russian, if you'd picked it up, and there was a good chance that you had, especially if you had encountered Russians, which were
migrants.
Migrants, especially if you had encountered them around World War II, because you would have had to pick up a little bit of Russian in order to communicate with your new neighbors, or you worked with someone in the war. You know, there's a lot of reasons you could actually learn Russian back in that day. However, this was in the beginning of the Cold War. And so the Western Allies were now firmly looking at Russia as an aggressor. And so you didn't want to be outed as a communist or as a socialist. However, the fact that Jessica the nurse had an interest in communism is very curious to me. And she seemed to be able to speak Russian fluently. So that those sort of things are interesting. When she was shown a plaster cast of the Somerton Man, she did say to police at the time that she didn't know him, but the witnesses stated that she did look taken aback to the point of appearing about to faint. She immediately looked away and would not look at it again.
That's a quote from the guy who made the plaster cast, so he was actually there.
It does suggest that she knew who this guy was, you know, because it's just a plaster cast of a random dude. So to turn away, to act afraid or scared or shaken, that denotes some sort of knowledge of who this person is. So
it's not even a body.
Yeah, so
you'd understand if it was a body.
I think that the nurse had a lot to do with this guy. there's the spy theory. And the spy theory is bolstered a little bit by the fact that she knew so much about Russia at the time. But there were also some similar deaths that had occurred, which also involved the Rubaiyat, the book we talked about, the book where the code was found, that had her phone number in it. The similar cases involved Joseph George Marshall, who was found in June 1945 in Ashton Park, Mosman, Sydney, with an open copy of the Rubaiyat on his chest. He was believed to have died by suicide via poisoning, but that's not 100% positive. He had a brother in high places who would later become Singapore's first chief minister. Another case is the 6th of June 1949. 2-year-old Clive Magnuson was found on a beach next to his weak and barely alive father, 20 kilometres up from the coast of Somerton. Cause of death could not be determined, though not believed to be natural drowning or blunt force. The father was transferred to a mental hospital and no known traces of poison were found. Clive's mother was accosted by a masked man who also ran her down and told her to keep away from the police or else. That says to me that those two were probably involved in something a little bit sketchier and probably not related to the case. But there were also anonymous phone calls sent to GM Gower, who was the secretary of Largs North Progress Associates, the suburb where Clive and his father were found. They stated that Mrs. Magnuson would meet with an accident if he interfered. And then A.H. Curtis, Mayor of Port Adelaide, received 3 anonymous calls threatening an accident if he stuck his nose into the Magnuson affair. Police believe these calls were a hoax related to a similar case in a nearby suburb. The Magnuson stuff, which is often lumped in here, I happen to think that that actually happens to do more with gangs or a mob. I don't think it has anything to do with the Somerton Man case. Do you, Holly?
The reason why it's stated as similar is just because, like Somerton Man, they couldn't work out how the kid was killed.
Yep.
There was no sign of any force or trauma to him. He didn't drown. He wasn't suffocated. It could have been poison, but they didn't find any.
Yeah.
Same thing as Somerton Man.
It's an unusual. You could theorize that someone was testing to see if they could kill someone this way and not be caught.
Except it was after.
Oh, sorry, it was after. Well, then there you go. There's a serial killer who can't be caught out there who likes to poison people.
Stay away from me.
The one thing that I have a hard time shaking, though, is what I mentioned at the top with Joseph George Marshall. He died with the copy of the Rubaiyat on his chest. It's weird that this book, which is a Persian book of poetry, keeps popping up. And it wasn't even highly produced either.
Again, not 100% positive that it was a poison.
Yeah.
Because they don't know.
Yeah, but the fact that this particular book, the Rubaiyat, just keeps rocking up is weird. It's weird.
I figure that it's a secret society getting rid of members who are trying to tell on them.
I've never heard that theory postulated before, but that's interesting.
That's my theory.
That's your theory. My theory here, if we want to go a little bit crazy, it could be that the Rubaiyat was being used by Allied spy forces at the time. Like I said, the Cold War with Russia was starting, and the Rubaiyat could have been the cipher that a group of spies all used in order to pass messages to one another. Our nurse, Jessica, could have been a part of that spy circle. Joseph George Marshall, who obviously died of poisoning. That's a very spy way of killing someone off. The Somerton Man, these guys could have all been a part of spy activities. You know, George Marshall could have been an Australian spy. Our nurse Jessica could have been a Russian spy. And the Somerton Man could have possibly been a American spy. And they're all using this book to decode messages back and forth.
This feels like a plot of Mission Impossible, Matthew.
I mean, it kind of does. If you want an even more simple explanation, or if we want to use Occam's razor here, and people use Occam's razor wrong. People think that, like, it's not that the simplest explanation is the correct one. It's just eliminate the amount of steps that it takes to reach a conclusion is more what it's about. And when you start to take things away, things become simpler. But anyway, if we're going to apply Occam's razor here, Somerton Man knew Jessica because he was her baby daddy. He came to find her because he was in love with her, discovered that he had a daughter, She didn't want to live with the shame. She was a nurse. She had access to chemicals. She poisoned him.
Okay, if that's what you think.
It's not what I think. It's more like there are a couple of theories out there. There's definitely some weirdness that I think there are connections there that have a plausible explanation. You know, it could be a hybrid of those theories where Jessica was a spy. She had an affair with an American spy. They had a kid together. She didn't want to live with the shame, so she killed him. I mean, you could theorize and theorize and theorize forever about this sort of stuff. Many people say that the Somerton Man was poisoned just based on it was liver, right?
I don't know. For all I know, he was blue.
Yeah. How he was killed, why he was killed, we'll never really know. But there is some weirdness concerning that book that connects these three people, and they all have very interesting backgrounds. If we are going to believe that this isn't just some random dude dying on the beach and that there is some weirdness there, then I would say it's quite possibly a spy ring, which would make sense for the context of the time. But we have a couple of theories as well. These are sort of the not official, but this is sort of what's been postulated in a bunch of books. So
these are the most popular ones. I'm going to read them because they're my research. I have all this knowledge. All right, so starting at the top, we're going to work our way down. I think there's about 10. In 1948 police report, Mr. Brian Joseph Dittmar claimed that he saw the man, Somerton Man, on the docks in 1945. He claimed the man was a boxer and a navyman by the name of Jack Thomas McLean. However, English, American, Australian Navy records, no record of that name at all.
Not only that, hands weren't very calloused, didn't have any injuries associated with boxing. At that time, you're going to have broken nose, you're going to have worn knuckles,
cauliflower
you're going to have
all that kind of
cauliflower ear, all that sort of stuff. Somerton Man didn't have any of that. So I'm striking that one off the list. What's our next one?
All right, an article in the Adelaide Advertiser on the 2nd of December 1948 identified the man as believed to be E.C. Johnson, but the man himself showed up at the police station the very next day.
Strike it off the list.
According to a police report in 1949, Dr. Moss Kapitz, an Egyptian national working in Adelaide, was shown the tie with the name T. Keen written on it. He said it actually said Keenik, which is Arabic, and the T was an Arabic J, which fits with the Persian writing on the paper, but that's about it. On viewing the body, the Egyptian national was convinced the man was Eastern European.
That's interesting. You know, the Rubaiyat was Persian. There could have been, maybe he was working under an assumed name at the time. It's kind of interesting, though. Like, I think there is a big... that's a weird one. I don't really have an explanation for that one.
I do.
Oh, yeah?
Someone wanted his name in the newspaper.
So, let's call it plausible.
All right, now we're going to blow right past the spy one because we've done that one a million times now, and we're going to move on to Mr. Paul Lawson, the guy who made the plaster cast of the body. He refused to answer a question about whether anyone positively identified the body in an interview aired on the ABC in 1978.
And that's the Australian Broadcasting Commission. We talked about that before. Why did he refuse to say?
He changed the topic. He didn't answer the question.
That's interesting.
Something tells me Jessica did identify it, and everyone decided to let it go because someone higher up on the level said, let it go.
Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. You know I was going to do it. In
1949, 3 different people identified him as a former woodcutter, Robert Walsh. Again, no calluses. This was recanted when a witness took a second viewing and realised that certain scars were missing and he was the wrong body type.
Again, people wanting to get their name in the paper. Yeah, they were just being gossip gerties, basically.
The next theory was a navyman from the SS Cycle, Tommy Reed, but his shipmate stated that it was not him on viewing the body. Again, calluses.
Yep.
Calluses are what is separating most of these theories out. In November 1953, they actually managed to cross 251, quote, solutions to his identity off the list.
And that was the police. Like, they were still actively working the case. They were trying to determine it. So, yeah, the 251 solutions.
5 years, 251 solutions.
It's kind of crazy.
In 2011, getting more recent, a woman in Adelaide contacted a biological anthropologist about an identification card found in her father's possessions by the name of H.C. Reynolds. It was a US-issued card for a foreign navyman from World War I. Comparisons of the photo and Somerton Man's photo were made, and anatomical similarities were made, including a mole on the cheek and the shape of the ear. H.C. Reynolds logs cannot be found in the UK, US, or Australian war archives, however, leading to only a possible ID match, but it could be a pseudonym.
Spycraft again.
Yes, Spycraft, yeah. And for some reason, this woman in Adelaide's father had it. Weird.
Yeah, Professor Derek Abbott.
So we're going to start this one from the top because this is almost as complicated as the case itself.
Yeah, this gets a bit weird as well.
Our final theory, in March 2009, Professor Derek Abbott began investigating the case anew.
This dude loves the Somerton Man case.
Oh yeah.
A little too much.
He's a professor at the University of Adelaide. If you look up his books, if you look up his research, it has everything to do with Somerton Man. He's even running a petition right now to get him dug up to do a DNA profile on him.
Reminds me of the Simpsons. Dig up his corpse, unearth those bones.
During his research, Professor Derek Abbott has postulated the theory that the cigarettes found could have contained a poison that was ingested when inhaled, but there was no evidence of poisoning.
Does that how?
There are some poisons that are only poisonous when you smoke them.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
But again, no evidence. He also tracked down the cotton from the case to the manufacturer to check out the packaging differences depending on where it was sold. And he found out that the cotton in the case was found only on the western side of America. So either Somerton Man was travelling through the western half of America, or he knew someone who did.
And the American comb, the chewing gum.
Yeah.
The possible American ID that was found in an earlier theory, you know, that it all sort of starts to tie together a little bit.
It shows a very much Americanization of him, while still apparently looking British. I don't know.
Now, Derek Abbott also has postulated a few things about the nurse Jessica's eldest son, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. This is where it gets a little personal for the professor. A photograph of Nurse Jessica's eldest son, Robin, showed similar ear and tooth formations to Somerton Man. Having the same ear formation is a 1 in 10 million chance. Having the same tooth formation, where he's missing his incisors, is a 1 in 20 million chance. I'll let you do the math on how much it is to get both of them at the same time.
Pretty crazy.
Now, Robin was 16 months old in 1948 when Somerton Man died, so it is possible that he was his son. And Robin could either have been the son of Somerton Man or the guy who was once thought to be Somerton Man, which was Alf Boxall. Now, he was a navyman, travelled the world, passing on messages for spies, right?
Yeah. And people talked about a navyman being involved a lot. So, you know, that's where it can start all linking together a little bit more.
Robin was an illegitimate child because Nurse Jessica was not married when he was born. She didn't get married until 1950. And she told everyone that Robin was her husband's son. At that point, however, 1946, when Robin was born, she was actually a mistress to this guy, who was a big hotshot lawyer. Now, I don't know about you, but when your illegitimate child's daddy comes wandering around, you might want to get rid of him if your other half is a lawyer.
Yeah, that's where we go into, as I mentioned as well, this is the Days of Our Lives soap opera sort of theory when it comes to the Somerton Man, that Nurse Jessica was just trying to cover up an illegitimate birth and an affair and, you know, sex out of wedlock, all that fun stuff that was frowned in the 1940s, and she was trying to cover it up.
So, Like a mother like son, Robin had an illegitimate daughter with a dancer in New Zealand. He gave her up for adoption. She grew up. She moved to Adelaide. She met this really nice professor who was studying the Somerton Man, and they got married.
Now, did he know that she was the granddaughter of Nurse Jessica before he married her? Or was that...
Yes.
He did, yeah. I thought so. I just couldn't remember, and that's where it's that's taking you home. That's taking your work home with you, Doctor.
That's almost as bad as David Tennant.
Yeah, it gets weird, but you know, everyone meets people in different places, and he obviously met her through that, and they got on really well, and now they're married. So
with two kids. So
best of luck there. The professor has suggested that a DNA profile would crack this case wide open because then they'd be able to start linking up some lineage. It would solve the problem because you would
especially with Ancestry.com nowadays.
Exactly. You would do a DNA profile. He could match it to his wife. If they have common DNA links, then obviously, you know, Jessica's children were from the Somerton Man, or
at least one of them.
You can at least put things to bed. You know what I mean? Like, you can at least start saying, okay, Jessica, let's look into her background some more, because that's going to lead you to more answers. She could have just been covering up a murder that she committed. Like, it could be as simple as that. But this is where it kind of sucks, doesn't it, Holly? Because...
Yes, the Attorney General, John Rao, has refused permission to exhume the body for a DNA test. He claims there needs to be public interest reasons that go beyond public curiosity or broad scientific interest to drag his body out of the ground. However, it has been suggested that having Somerton Man's DNA taken and his body identified is exactly the same as identifying soldiers in war graves, bringing closure to the family. Kate, however, Nurse Jessica's daughter, opposed the exhumation as being disrespectful to her brother Robin.
See, now that's weird, right? Like, that's not disrespectful. That's, I'm afraid to find something out.
No, that's, I don't want to drag that skeleton out into the daylight.
Okay.
That's what that is.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Figurative and literal.
Yeah.
Now, the last little piece of information that we have for you before we let you think about it.
This is actually recent. So this is the one tiny little glimmer of hope that we can talk about that other podcasts probably haven't covered yet.
Because they were before it.
Until the next sorry son of a bitch gets caught in the same bullshit that we've been caught in and podcasters before us. Until that happens, this is the first time I think someone's going to be talking about this. Unless Case File did it already. Did they mention this?
No, not yet, because this was done... Case File was recorded in early 2016-ish, so no. Now,
we're bringing something new. We're
adding to it.
We're bringing some more bullshit to this bullshit machine.
Well, you never know. The next generation of podcasts could actually have the solution.
They could. Can I do this bit? Because this makes me happy to actually bring something new to this. All right, so in 2017, 3 hairs were found on the plaster cast. This was the cast that was taken of the Somerton Man's face that was shown to Nurse Jessica. There were 3 hairs found that could house DNA. Now, Professor Abbott has submitted them for analysis, but the results could take up to 12 months before a DNA profile is built. So we're currently sitting in 2018. It
was December that he submitted, so it might not be till early 2019 before we hear anything. But we could fucking hear something.
We could. I would tell everyone not to get too excited. If you are following the Somerton Man case, don't get too excited. Hairs can pop up in the weirdest of places. It could be from the plasterer himself. However, this could be the thing that at least starts to bring a little bit of closure to one of the most frustrating, mysterious death cases, not only in Australia, but in the world. You know, for me, it's like, who was this man? Why did he die on that beach alone? Why did he have this piece of book? Why was this book dumped in a car? You know, there are so many connections here and they just go back and forth. Ultimately, it's one of those things that could be solved, maybe, possibly, but I don't think it will be. I don't think we'll ever know what this guy was doing. It could just be a lot of weird shit happened to coalesce in the wrong time at the wrong place, and it's created a mystery where there wasn't one. This could just be the simple covering up of an affair, or someone dying on a beach from a disease that we probably know about today that they didn't know about back then. It could be as simple as that. Could have been an old lover visiting a lover, having health problems, going onto the beach and passing away.
HIV. That's the only thing I can think of that wouldn't have been known then.
That's possible. That is a possibility. You know, maybe a form of blood cancer that they had, like, you know, leukemia. There are a lot of things that could have been possible for this man to have just passed away on a beach. You know, you could speculate on this all day. There's simple explanations. There are complex explanations. Okay, this is how I'll end it. Whatever you think fits the best, go with.
That's what happened.
That's what happened. Because I don't think anyone is ever going to get any explanation as to what occurred. You know what's crazy, though? Cold cases get solved years after the fact. Recently, the Golden State Killer was caught. No one ever thought he would be. No, everyone thought he got away with it. But through DNA, they tracked him down. It happens.
I mean, that guy was notorious enough to get 3 nicknames. East Area Rapist, the original Night Stalker, and the Golden State Killer.
So that guy, he eventually got caught too. So there may be some light at the end of the tunnel. Like I said, there are those 3 hairs. They could shed a little bit more light on who this guy was. They could have been from... Pun intended. So, yeah, that is the Somerton Man. That's a bit of a wrap on him. I think this is the longest podcast we've ever done to date. I'm going to take a breath. So that's it for this episode of Weird Crap in Australia. Thanks for following us so far on this little journey. We're enjoying it, as you can no doubt hear. There is some weird crap that happens in this country. How many episodes I think we've got mapped out, Holly? About 50 so far?
Think so, maybe 45.
Who knows where we could go with this? If you'd like to know where we're going to go with it, the easiest way to do that is just subscribe to the podcast. You can find the podcast on all the podcatcher apps. You know, if you've listened to it online and you want to get it on your iPhone or your Android phone, we're going to be anywhere where you can find iTunes or Google Podcasts, all that sort of good stuff. So don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss an episode of the weirdest crap that we can find in Australia. Also, don't forget to follow us on the social medias, Facebook, Instagram. You can find us on all of those. We also have a couple of podcasts on the TV Breakdown. Holly hosts Beyond the Words, which is all about how to put together a book and market that book. It's the complete guide. Other than that, I don't think we have anything else to plug. Do we, Holly?
Yes, the next episode will be crocodiles and sharks because I know how much you fucking love those animals.
That episode is going to be a lot of fun. We are going to talk about some of the most gory, grisliest attacks perpetrated by crocodiles and sharks. That one is coming up next. So we're going to do some of the real monsters that are stalking Australia. Until then, I've been your host, Matthew Soul. My co-host, of course, is Holly Hunt.
See yous.
And stay safe. We will see you next time. The Weird Crap in Australia podcast is produced by Holly and Matthew Soul for The Modern Meltdown. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please rate and review on your favourite podcatching app.